think the main thing is that direction will never be thrust upon you. Like, you can't be sitting in your bed one day and have a sense of purpose. Like, passively brainstorming never leads to much. I think actively exploring, on the flip side, does a lot. And that doesn't mean you're doing it with an intention of, I want to start a company. I don't think anyone should go into things thinking, oh, I should start a company, or I should, like, you shouldn't optimize for the outcome. You should optimize for just your interest in something. Like, I really like throwing parties, so let me start throwing parties. My parties are doing really well. I should make an Instagram account for my parties. There's a lot of people asking me where the other parties are. I should make an app to find, like, I think that sense of logic is, I guess, a bottoms up logic makes a lot more sense.
Being broke is bad, but being stupid is what's really bad. And what's really, really bad is being broke and stupid.
Confucius says that you have two lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one.
No one is paying attention.
It's not that hard, Scott. Tell him, Wash.
It's incredibly hard.
Hey, anything worth doing is.
Hello, wonderful people. Welcome to the first episode of the Young, Smart, and Battling Broke podcast. I'm your host, Cole Hume. I'm young, beginning to be a little less broke, and as for smart, I don't know about that one. But I try oh so hard to have a loving impact, and I see financial savviness and mindfulness as keys to doing so. I studied philosophy and computer science at UCLA, and I'm now a strategy consultant at BCG. But by far the best thing about me is the extraordinary people and mentors in my life, and my effort to learn from those who inspire me. This podcast is for young people striving to live ethical, enjoyable, and yes, wealthy lives. Together, we'll learn from fascinating thinkers and mentors who seem to be figuring it out, one brilliant idea at a time. Today, I am interviewing Tejes Srivalsan, CEO and founder of Poppin, a social networking app connecting users to local parties. It has raised $2.4 million in funding. While leading Poppin to its next round of funding, Tejes is finishing up his studies at UCLA in computer science and cognitive science. What I love about Tejes is how independently he thinks. This episode was an absolute blast to record. We cover how Tejes almost single-handedly had Trippie Redd perform at UCLA, his unconventional strategies for cold messaging, his newest framework for people sucking at things, and his advice for high ambition people, as well as much more. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Tejes, I'm so excited to finally be chatting with you, man. It has been a minute.
It's been a while.
And I want to dive right in with one of my favorite tweets of yours, dog. Some people work hard for their resume. I work hard, so I won't need one. Explain.
Yeah. So I think I tweeted that a couple of years ago. I think it was my freshman or sophomore year. It was like, just got into UCLA and applying to all the clubs. And it's the first time that I had to make a resume and improve it, and get rejected from club resume screens and then make it past in some. And I was just thinking a lot about resumes at the time. So I still don't know. I think part of why I tweeted that is I was just, sometimes when you feel like your resume or the thing you're doing, you're not good enough at it, you tweet something overly ambitious to make yourself cope. So I definitely think there's part of that there. But I think the sentiment is really that I never saw myself as someone who would do things to say I did them or to like show other people I did them, but rather that the things I do would bring me to the places I want to be naturally because of also the scale they're on. And I think, the most successful people that, at least how I would define them, as like creating a lot of value for the people around them, you never bring up their resume. If they walk into a room, you're not asking them for your resume. So I think the resume by construct is something that's limiting in a sense. And I feel like if you do something so amazing that you're not even going to need a resume, people are just going to know what you've done. And also you know what you've done. And I think that's kind of where I was coming from. But I think there's also a lot of cope in there. So, yeah, I mean, I
want the reputation to precede the resume.
Kind of, yeah. But again, I will say there was probably a decent amount of cope.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, dude.
Yeah.
Coping with what, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think I obviously came into UCLA working on my startup Poppin. It was way earlier than any sort of significant traction or anything that actually meant anything.
Okay.
But I always had a lot of grand visions for it and wanted it to go certain places. But that was more of like a delusion or like a pure ambition rather than things that had actually happened. So
Yeah.
at the same time, I was still a student, right? I had to conform to like going to classes, applying to clubs, and I didn't want to fall behind because at that time I'm working on a big idea with very small progress. So I think it was just frustrating for me at that time trying to like fit a mold of something that I never really felt comfortable with or saw myself in, but I still had to do it because like I didn't have an alternative in a sense. You see what I mean? So you have this idea, you have this grand vision, but you can't really do anything about it yet because obviously those things take time. And in the meanwhile, you don't want to lose opportunities like joining good clubs or organizations like the one we met in. So yeah, I think it was kind of a mix of both at the time. And yeah, that was kind of a interesting time of life, I would say, where I had a lot of things planned, but not a lot of things executed. But I believed in my plan, but I still had to do other things to like ensure myself in a sense.
Yeah. So my first interaction with you, your radical self-belief absolutely struck me. I was with some other friends in an org that we're both a part of, and you immediately started talking about this business that you're building, and you talked about it with so much eloquence. And yet the people that I was with were thinking, this 18-year-old thinks he's hot shit. They like didn't really like bluntly tease you, but they definitely weren't like taking you on like and giving you the full respect. And I know that you now look back at that self with like, okay, he was a little bit delusional talking about that past version of you. But I remember just being struck and being like, holy shit, I'd believe in this dude. If he believes in himself this much and he's this freaking articulate, it was just super impressive. I'm curious though, at that age, even if you claim to have a little bit of delusion, clearly it wasn't all delusional. But how did you deal with so many people telling you and mocking you and teasing you in certain ways, peers that just doubt you, and you having probably self-doubt a lot, and maybe at times fooling yourself to continue into this path. But I just want to hear, how do you think that Tejes was able to deal with such a unique social situation around a lot of people that you respect, yet they're not giving you the respect back?
Yeah, that's honestly a good question. I haven't really thought about that for a long time. And I would say during those conversations too, I obviously could sense their skepticism. I wasn't oblivious to the fact that they're kind of like, the fuck is this guy talking about? Or like he's in over his head. But I honestly didn't focus on that stuff too much. Like in most cases, like third-party opinions don't really like influence what actually happens, right? The only thing they can influence is your motivation. So obviously I wouldn't want that to come after me. But the way I think about it, I honestly like would probably have more doubt in myself now than I did then, because the deeper you go, the more you really learn about how hard something is. So definitely I was pretty delusional, but I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good delusion. I think people should be delusional. If they're not going to think of anything crazy. And I've always believed that you should kind of like be confident, especially if you're doing something new. Like if you're doing something new and you're not confident in it, then it doesn't even exist. And then if your confidence in it doesn't exist, then it's probably never going to exist at a meaningful scale. So I've always had the belief that I really want to, when I start something new, and especially Poppin, this was far before, again, there was anything relevant happening within the business. But if I want people to listen to what I'm saying, better fucking be entertaining about it. You know what I mean? I better be someone listens to, right? Because if they're not going to listen to me, then I have nothing and nobody's paying attention. At least if they want me to fail, they're still keeping tabs, or at least, I think, and I don't think I was like very like over the top. I don't think, at least I didn't intend to be that way, but I definitely had a lot of confidence. And then the way I thought about it too is like, even if I fail, like the worst thing that's going to happen is someone's going to be like, oh, you thought you were going to succeed and you failed. And that doesn't really happen that much in life. Like people will always bring back the times like he said he was going to do that and he did it. But very few times people are like, oh, you said you're going to do it and you didn't do it. Like that's just not the way the human mind works, right? Like most people will give you some respect for trying. So I think the way I was thinking about it was I have to talk about it like it's a real thing, because it's probably not yet, but it might be. And at least then it looked like I was right back then. So I honestly, to answer your main question, I didn't really think about what people thought about me for having a grand vision. Like if people didn't like me or thought I was cocky or like overconfident about it, and they could be right, they could be wrong, but that doesn't change what I have to do to make it a reality. So if I really want it to happen, like that opinion is not going to faze me. It's a funny story actually. when I first started Poppin, like this was maybe like 4 months before that we had that conversation at B-Plate. And it was 2 weeks in, I was working at an internship at another startup. Okay. And I was telling my coworker, this is literally 2 weeks. I'd just come up with the idea. And the guy I was working with was like, hey, my buddy actually is one of the founding team members of one of the hottest social apps, like college social apps. And I had, mind you, I had an idea for a college social app before going to college. So this was like the crown jewel of all people I could meet. And he gets this guy, he calls him, he gets him on the Zoom call we're on. And he's like, you can pitch to him. So I start pitching my idea to him, like with a lot of passion. I was like really excited. And this is like the honeymoon phase where you just come up with your idea. So it's hard to find flaws in it initially. And you've not really tried it, so you don't know what's going to go wrong. But I had an insane amount of confidence. I pitched him, and he's like, I can tell you're a really smart guy, but you should be working on something else. Like, everyone's tried this idea. It fails. Like, you're wasting your time. And I was pretty demoralized because, obviously, I genuinely looked up to this guy in the sense that he's done something that I aim to do. And if he says I can't do it, it's probably more significant than a peer of mine being like, oh, it's a dumb idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I really internalized that, and I did consider quitting at that point because it was 2 weeks in. I thought about it a lot, but I've always like just believed that if you fuck around and find out, you probably gain more value than like just quitting immediately.
Absolutely.
And after I heard that from him and decided that it's best for me to carry on in situations like the one we were in, it's harder to like care what people think.
Yeah.
Especially if it's negative. Or like they don't believe you. Like that doesn't make a difference. Even if they did believe me, it's not going to do anything for me. It's almost worse if they believe me, if you think about it, right? Because if they believe you, they give you a further false sense of confidence, and it's not like they're in any position to help you.
Yeah,
so,
and it fucks with your dopamine pathways.
Exactly.
You're like you already got the reward. It's like why am I even doing this? If they're already like giving me the that's achievement.
Exactly. Yeah. And if it was a good idea, if people recognize it as a great idea from the beginning, then it probably is already existing and successful, right? So I do think that to build something like really great, you have to have what like seems like a bad idea but actually is a good idea. Like if nothing great at first started sounding like an amazing idea. If it was an amazing idea, then everyone would have thought of it. Not to say this is a great idea, we still might fail. But I mean, I think it's definitely a better idea than a lot of people thought, and it's being executed better than a lot of people thought. So yeah, at least that is working right now.
And usually iteration on a really fucking bad idea is better than a great idea. Like, just continuing to let it evolve and letting failure be your feedback mechanism. Yeah. There's no chance you're just going to learn from just continuing to think. Yeah. Like, I don't think I've ever come to like a meaningful conclusion by just letting my thoughts swirl. Yeah. It's always from, action. Exactly what you took.
Just how much intensity you're going to come with it. Come to it with. I think that is really the game changer.
Hell yeah, brother. That makes a ton of sense. So I've heard you speak about this before, but in college, we have a capacity to focus on a lot of different things, especially if they're studying a social science. And if they're studying econ and they have no free time, it's because they're absurdly optimizing for a 4.0. And they could probably put in half the hours at that point and get a 3.8 or 3.9. So with that much time in your hands and this plastic of a brain, you chose to go down a more entrepreneurial path. If you're chatting with an 18-year-old, 19-year-old beginning college, or someone halfway through, or someone even about to graduate, just like what would you encourage them with that additional time that they have to start investing in or to really work on? I'd love to just hear how Tejes would talk to someone like that.
Yeah. I think the main thing is that direction will never be thrust upon you. Like, you can't be sitting in your bed one day and have a sense of purpose. Like, passively brainstorming never leads to much. I think actively exploring, on the flip side, does a lot. And that doesn't mean you're doing it with an intention of, I want to start a company. I don't think anyone should go into things thinking, oh, I should start a company, or I should, like, you shouldn't optimize for the outcome. You should optimize for just your interest in something. Like, I really like throwing parties, so let me start throwing parties. My parties are doing really well. I should make an Instagram account for my parties. There's a lot of people asking me where the other parties are. I should make an app to find, like, I think that sense of logic is, I guess, a bottoms up logic makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
I think I had also, coming into college, a misconception that entrepreneurship is starting a company, and that everyone should start a company. But now I think everyone should build something, but that doesn't necessarily need to be a company. And building something just means you are interested in something. It's the intersection of what you're interested in and what you're good at, and then like productizing it or making it scalable so multiple people can get value from it, right? So it has some form of leverage. So I think the most important thing I tell someone is just have fun. Like, what makes you have a lot of fun? Like, I love startups, I love entrepreneurship, but the reason I think cared about working on Poppin is it was intertwined beautifully with my social life. And like, I really cared about going out and meeting new people and having my friends meet my other friends. And, just, I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was very distracted. I think throughout college, I joined a shit ton of clubs. Like, I was doing CS for a while, so it was challenging to like keep up with those classes. I was doing a lot of social things. Like, I was fucking around a lot. But I think the reason the company made progress is not necessarily because I was like very disciplined about like, oh, I need to work from 5 to 8 p.m. on my startup. It was just that it, like I said, worked so well with my life. Like, if I meet 5 people and I said, hey, I should invite them to a kickback so I get to know them better. Like, I should throw a party. And that benefited me on a social level. Like, a lot more people got to know who I am. I got to make some money by throwing parties. By running the Instagram account, I got to learn about like interesting social psychology as to why someone would follow you back, why they don't. Like, just weird shit. Like, I was just fucking around, and it benefited like my personal life in the sense that throwing parties as a college student, especially cool parties, like it gives you a good amount of social clout, and that's what you want in a college environment. Everyone's playing a status game. And the business that I was working on really complemented and improved my life and didn't take me away from things that I enjoyed doing. For me, which is talking to people and going out. If anything, it put me in those scenarios much more frequently, and in like cooler and cooler scenarios where I'd meet like cooler people every time, I feel like, almost. And also got me to just meet such a diverse group of people so quickly. Like, by the end of my freshman year, I felt like I knew everyone on campus. And for me, as someone who's a people person, that's an awesome feeling. So I would say I just really liked what I was doing. And that's why my motivation for it was really high. It's just because I fucking loved it. Like, I didn't have to be like, oh, I have to work on Poppin now. Like, it was never that. It was just like, fuck, I want to throw a party. Oh, we should do this. We should get this house involved so I meet those guys, and then, market it to this demographic so I get to know more people here, and then more people will follow us on Instagram and then download the app. Like, it was very like personal, right? Yeah. And I think when you're young, you don't really know anything about starting companies. I just felt like there was something I really liked doing, and we had kind of lightning in a bottle. Like, the reaction people were having to it made me feel like there's definitely something here. Like, there's something in this realm that is, people just are fucking with it. Like, they like it. They want to keep coming back to it. And at that point, then obviously we like got into more like of an entrepreneurial mindset. Like, we should incorporate a company. We should build this app. We should hire this person to do this. And I definitely think like the level of work I'm doing now is very different than what I was doing then. At least I feel like I started out throwing a lot of parties on the ground. I was living on campus. And then for like the year before this, I was like a little bit more like on my laptop, like planning things, like all that stuff, which is important. But then this year I was like, I have to go back to throwing parties. Like, this is what gives me the most amount of motivation. Like, I understand my product 10 times better if I throw a party on it. So like almost every Friday for the last 2 months, I've thrown a party of like 500 plus people, and we find like a shit ton of bugs. We have a really good time. We make new connections there, and it makes what you're working on a lot more fun. So I think the key is to have fun productively, and like that can lead you to building something, or maybe not, but like just got to have fun. And obviously you need to know what fun is going to lead you in the right direction and what fun's going to take you away from that. But I would say like I was just optimizing for having fun and learning new things, and it led me to build a startup. But I think what's like fun for them.
So something I'm hearing is like double click on your interests, and maybe something cool comes of that. Maybe there's a business related to it, but start playing around with it. And if you have the time, if you're really into songwriting, for example, make some type of cool routine surrounding songwriting. Start like, hell, there's so many people that blow up on TikTok, like Zach Bryan, who just like started posting shit, and then he'd get motivated because he'd be like, oh, well, I just got to post that thing today. So he'd maybe do a little vocal warm up. That was naturally improving his voice. And he was writing his songs. And he's like, oh, and there's a little community that's surrounding this. And for you, it was, I want to be in community. I want to be throwing parties. I want to be like, I want status. I want to be like feeling cool in college. And this mechanism was serving so many purposes for you.
Yeah.
And hell, it was a fucking business.
Yeah.
Like, you like kind of add this additional element to it.
Yeah.
So I think it sounds like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, like you have a broad definition for entrepreneurship, and it's more so just building. And what you believe in is like, if you go for intensity over consistency, or go for business building rather than fun, you're going to burn out.
Yeah.
And especially in college, when it really doesn't always matter the next paycheck. And we're talking from a privileged position.
Yeah.
Both of us probably had college funds relatively. And we definitely worked our asses off in college and allocated our time in a lot of different directions. But like you're saying to like the person that does have this extra time, just like start iterating on that passion and have fun with it.
Yeah.
And see if something comes of it. Is
Yeah.
that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. I think my definition of entrepreneurship is taking risks to create value.
Okay.
That's true entrepreneurship, in my opinion. I mean, it's probably going to change in the next 5 years. As long as I'm doing entrepreneurial things, I hope the definition changes because that'll keep it exciting.
Love that definition though, because like value is like so broad in that definition. Value doesn't need to be external.
Yeah.
Value can just be
Exactly.
for yourself. It can be like, I am continuing to build this skill set.
Yeah.
And I am doing so, and I'm taking risks in terms of my time allocation and my money allocation. But I believe that this is so damn valuable for me.
Yeah.
That can be the case in some entrepreneurial venture. And like, this is obviously getting very philosophical about what this word entrepreneurship means.
Yeah.
But I love that definition because I think it eventually can become something external, something that you can monetize, something that you can productize.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to create value and taking risks to do so, there's a lot of meaning there.
Definitely. And value for me early on was I was throwing parties. My best friend who never talked to a girl before found his girlfriend at one of the first parties that I threw. And for me, that was fucking sick. Like, that's what the value was. Like, we didn't even make money on that event. We like just about broke even. And it was like 800 people event. It was like one of my first big events at UCLA. And my friend who goes to school in San Diego, he came up and he literally met his girlfriend they broke up now, but they had dated. And like, I was like, that's so fucking crazy. Like, that did not exist before I threw a party.
Yeah, you were a butterfly flap for like a really meaningful thing.
Exactly. Like, exactly. And you just create the thing. I mean, so initially, like I said, I Poppin on a social status level obviously was motivating, but the thing that really gets me like excited about it is we are essentially productizing serendipity, right? We're putting a bunch of people in a room, and then obviously these rooms are typically like parties, like college parties, and people sometimes are under the influence. They're like, there's lights, there's music. Ultimately, they become de-individuated. They stop giving a fuck about how they are perceived in that moment because they're just having fun, right? They're not thinking about anything else. They're living in the moment. And at a college age, that's honestly pretty difficult to do because there's so much swirling in your mind. There's so much things to think about. And then you're in this environment, and then you meet new friends. You meet someone you're interested in romantically. You meet a business partner. Like, so many of the business relationships I formed have been at Poppin events. And in college, that's something that we're craving, right? Obviously, that overlapped with the age that everyone's at and the willingness to go out and whatnot. Like, to do that at a click of a button, I believe should exist for every single college student and every young person, honestly. I think there's a button to get food to your door. There's a button to get a ride to somewhere. There's a button to invest money in Bitcoin. There's a button to do everything on your phone, but there isn't a button to fucking connect with people organically, reliably. To me, that's pretty fucking crazy.
Yup.
And obviously parties is the inroads for us because they're sexy. People pay attention to them. They're like flashy, a little bit controversial. Like, you need to get people's attention. But long term, what we're trying to build is a button in your phone that you can meet meaningful people with. And then back to the point of college students, right? Like you said, we are speaking from a privileged position, but beyond that also, like, there's no other time in your life that you have the ability to take such risks. Like, in college, the first day I got to college, I was like, holy fuck, I can do anything right now. Like, even if I do something like, I mean, I'm not advocating doing anything illegal, of course, but I'm saying even if I did something
everything illegal.
even if I did something illegal, hypothetically, like not majorly illegal, minorly illegal, I was like, it's a college student, it's fine. You know, there's like, again, don't do anything illegal. My point is the rules are a little bit like like they're kind of gray. Like you can get away with a lot.
Absolutely.
And then classes are a joke. You have no parental oversight, right? You have a bunch of time. You have a bunch of smart fucking people around you to do things with. So you have this ability to take risks that you never will have again in your life. And it's like this newfound independence. The second you graduate, then you're expected to make money, right? And there's this quote that I love, which is the most addictive thing in the world is a monthly salary after heroin. But once your bank account starts getting refilled every month, and you have monthly subscriptions to things, you have rent, you have insurance, you have all this shit to pay for.
W-2 to the veins.
I know. Yeah. You fucking, like, you are locked in. Like, you can't not make money at that point, right?
And
it's
then
very
you start
difficult.
Picking up obligations.
Yeah, you get married, you have a kid. You cannot take the risks you can now. So while college is about having fun, it is about taking risks. So that's why I think it's a great time for entrepreneurship. The other thing I think is college students are also a little delusional and naive. And that manifests itself in two ways. One, people come up with like a bunch of stupid ideas that go nowhere because they just don't think about it. But those people who come up with stupid ideas come up with a couple more stupid ideas until they ultimately come up with one that's half decent, maybe even good. And then at that time, they have the ability to take risk. And on top of that, now they have this thing that they care about, that they have time to work on, and they can actually go and do it. And they're delusional enough to think, like me, my freshman year, like, holy fuck, like I can go do this. If I had the same idea now, I would not be able to build this company because I would not believe in myself to do it. Because I've seen so many startups that like raise money. I've talked to people and be like, this is a shitty fucking idea. Like, I mean, a lot of people say it's a shitty fucking idea. And I would think about it in the way like, oh, like I think too analytically. Like I think about risk. I think about the fact that I'm supposed to like get a job soon. I'm not going to be like able to work on this full time. How am I going to get people? Like, the older you get, the more reservations you have for things. So when you're at this age, doesn't mean, again, you don't have to build a company, but you should go do something pretty fucking crazy because you're never going to have that like naivete in a sense, like that ability to just be like, I'm going to fucking do this. And I think for me, I mean, definitely I've been burnt a couple times by doing stupid shit. Like that was not the right thing to do, or like over ambitious or poorly planned and executed. But still, those things taught me so much more. Kind of an analogy I've been thinking about recently. I was arguing with someone, my favorite argument, maybe we can dive into this also, but consulting versus entrepreneurship.
Let's do it.
So, I mean, what the person was saying to me is that consultants are experts on things because they see so many different applications of it and so many different outcomes of something. So like if someone's been in consulting for a while, they are, they're seeing like, let's say it's like strategy for like getting electric cars to market, right? They can tell you how every single company's done it and they've got an inside look and they have this great idea and they have this amazing market map and they understand the intricacies of the market better than anyone else and they have a 360-degree view. And the person that I was talking to was telling me like they are the expert in that field. But I disagreed. I don't think so. Because most of the recommendations they've made in that process, they haven't really felt the outcome of it, right? So yes, they know a lot about it, but they haven't really felt the outcomes of their decisions, right? So how can you really know something? And I was thinking about this analogy.
When failure is the best educator.
Exactly. So who knows more about how hot fire is? Is it someone who's watched someone get burnt 20 times or someone who's stuck their finger in the fire? Like, who do you think better understands that? Obviously, each side in terms of consulting and entrepreneurship has its strengths when it comes to certain decisions. But, like, I think from a college perspective, a lot of people aim to be consultants. And it makes a lot of sense because it's a great job. It's a great, like, entry point, I think, into a career. And you learn a shit ton very quickly. And you get financially stable very quickly. But while you're in college, like, people should, instead of spending a lot of time recruiting for consulting, I think go build something. And then they'll learn a lot more about consulting too because they've actually done more stuff themselves.
Yeah, this is where the unique risk for a college student comes in, right? Where we're chatting about, like I was chatting with my older brother a few days ago. He's 6 years older, and he made a funny comment that really stuck with me. He said, "Cool, you still have like 2 to 3 more risks left in the tank than I do." And we're kind of talking about finances. Like you can still do a few more like real mistakes at 22 than I can at 28.
Yeah.
And I do think though, and especially these type A environments that like excellent colleges foster, like the risk is there, but it's such a different type of risk. Now the risk is not like, oh my goodness, will my girlfriend still love me if I'm not making $300,000 a year?
Mhm.
Like it might be for someone a decade older than me.
Mhm.
It's, can I get that first job that might maybe sets me on a fantastic trajectory? And to each their own. I ended up feeling that stress,
Mhm.
feeling that peer pressure, mildly. I mean, I also experienced a startup one summer that on my second week of being there, they laid off 80% of the workforce
Mhm.
at an all hands meeting. This was a 300 person company. And then after that meeting, it was like 40 people and the damn intern, me. And that made me feel like, oh my goodness, am I actually equipped to try to build something
Mhm.
and have other people trust in me when I don't feel like I know shit?
Yeah.
And I think that, like we were talking about earlier, like confidence is crucial when you're building anything. But when other people are relying on you, that's when the confidence can get a little dangerous
Mhm.
and can get a little spooky. And I do think that there's a lot of justifications for pursuing the typical professional paths like consulting or investment banking in terms of the skills you build on all the different modes of capital.
Mhm.
And I think some people actually enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I definitely had moments where I enjoyed it a lot. And who knows, maybe I'll continue to love it.
Yeah. I think, I think ultimately people, I think after college, right, I think people should genuinely do whatever they enjoy the most.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people don't use that heuristic.
Do you think that they should do whatever they enjoy the most, and that's not coming from a mildly privileged position? Because I think that you have had a lot of success with your kind of first thing you sprinted with.
Mhm.
And you recognize that you're the minority, though,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, I would not consider myself successful.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that.
But you right now have something on essentially your resume, which I know we joked about earlier, not
Yeah.
being meaningful,
Yeah.
that could help you get to another meaningful destination.
Mm-hmm.
That essentially, like your work in Poppin
Mm-hmm.
could create any opportunity in these professional spheres.
Mm-hmm.
That somebody that just casually pursued the professional spheres would be able to get, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think that I have a biased perspective on it, right? Because I'm not dealing with the ramifications yet of failing and
Mhm.
like having to like pivot into something new and then be like, fuck, I just wasted 4 years doing this and I failed at it. But I do think genuinely, like, barring financial constraints, because obviously you have to take care of that, like
Mhm.
hierarchy of needs, you need to make sure you have enough money no
Mhm.
matter what you're doing. But I think it comes down to, for me, the way I think of things is to optimize for the highest level of fulfillment. That word was tough.
It's a really difficult word.
It's a difficult thing. Yeah, I think that's what everyone should optimize for. I think that's what everyone subconsciously optimizes for also. But oftentimes they get lost in the sauce and they think of status things like, wow, if I try to do this thing that I really love, but I don't get this investment banking job, all these people are going to think I'm a loser. Like, so I can't take that risk. And I think, again, value creation is like at scale, in my opinion, it requires risk.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, again, I think everyone should do ultimately what is the right decision for them. But I think that not a lot of people think about the framework of what do they actually enjoy doing.
Yeah,
Someone,
I think coming back to your ultimate whys,
Mhm.
and whys is in WHY, like having some mode of like, okay, do I live just so that I live for my parents? Do I live for to experience as much happiness as I possibly can in this life?
Mhm.
Do I live so that I can follow Jesus's work? Do you live for virtue? Whatever it is, like know your ultimate why and have that try to inform decisions and question that why though frequently.
Yeah.
And if it's making you miserable, be aware of that.
Yeah.
A lot of people will pursue the meaning that other people put on them and the direction that other people put on them, right?
Mhm.
We are, for our outputs and our thoughts are downstream from our inputs.
Mhm.
And you grew up in San Francisco. You grew up with really interesting inputs. And I think one thing that I really would challenge people to do is look at the person that they really are hearing advice from. If they're a decade older or they're a peer, it's harder with a peer, but if they're a decade older or 3 decades older, and say, do I admire you for all the other things outside of this societal reputation? And if you're thinking, man, they're just killing it in life, like whatever it may be, then maybe listen to that advice. But Otherwise, that advice should have a heavy, heavy, heavy grain of salt to it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that one of the good things about doing startups is that there's less people to compare yourself to. Of course, there's like a ton still, like objectively there's a lot, but it's like it's harder to compare things because each path is different rather than like if two people are going for the same job, it's very easy, right? So in general, like one of the things that I specifically in middle and high school that I would think a lot about and that would bring me down was like comparing myself to others. Like that's just something I would like think about a lot. And then I just promised myself, and it's not that I stopped completely, but I promised myself that I'm just not going to compare myself to anybody else. It just doesn't make any sense. Like they are not dealt the same hand that I'm dealt, right? They are not interested in the same things. They haven't gone through the same struggles. They haven't had the same like benefits, privileges, whatever. Like it's very difficult to compare yourself to somebody else. And like at the end of the day, when you compare one person to another, there's no real worse person. It's just the only person who's getting the negative end of the stick is the person who's doing the comparing. So even like in terms of advice, I try to ask for very pointed advice on things. Like I don't believe in like generic advice. So when someone gives me generic advice, I'm not going to take it. Like it's just not, it works for them. Doesn't mean it's going to work for me. But if there's something specific that they've done, like if I'm increasing the constraints, right, I can get closer to the truth is what I believe. So if like I want to know how to raise money, right, I'm going to talk to someone about raising money, right? If I want to learn how to get healthy, I'm going to talk to someone who has a similar body type as me and became healthy. Like there's a lot of generic advice out there. And I think people should be very careful who they take advice from, because ultimately I think the most important thing is like having your discretion and your decision making. I think that's the part, like that's the fun part of life is like, yes, there's a lot of good advice out there and a lot of people who will tell you things that can make you get there faster or like better or whatever. But I think part of the fun is exploring stuff on your own. And I think that's why for me, I personally enjoy entrepreneurship a lot, because even if I fucking fail, like I chose to fucking fail, or I made decisions that made me fucking fail. You see what I mean? Like I can't point fingers at anybody else. Like the best way to test something is to control all the variables, and you get to control a lot of the variables in entrepreneurship. So when it comes to advice, I keep that in mind. And then I think the best people always to get advice from are people who are older, specifically like your parents or like people who really know you for you, because they won't give you conventional advice. They'll give you things that are kind of related to their perception of you.
But know the lens that your parents are looking through too.
Definitely.
Because if your parents are seeing your life's meaning, or their almost life's meaning for how happy their child is, probably a fantastic person to hear advice from, on some things. But also they probably won't push you sometimes in the ways that you need to be pushed.
Definitely.
And then someone that's indexing the other way as a parent can be really dangerous when they're like I mean, I know a lot of families where if the kid doesn't graduate college, if the kid doesn't get a great job out of school, automatically the kid's a failure in the parents' minds. If they can't talk about their kid when they go to their little tennis tournament on Sunday or whatever, and talk about them with pride, like that's what really matters to some parents. And
definitely
you have to be able to assess your parents critically.
100%. 100%.
That's one of the most absurd and dangerous inputs, unfortunately.
No, I mean, parents have a lot of control over kids. Like anything a parent says, whether you like them or don't like them or agree with them or disagree with them, in almost every case is going to have an impact on you, and a profound impact, as a matter of fact. I mean, there's no one I argue more about my life decisions with than my parents. But I think I try to, I think I'm very fortunate that like, I feel like they have my best interests at heart, and they've, looked out for me. So I definitely am very privileged and fortunate to have them as a resource, and definitely be able to take what they say with a lot of significance. But I think just understanding, like you said, the lens at which your parents are looking at things can also be very informing, because it's not just about what they say and executing what they say. It's about understanding how they're looking at you, taking what they say, and then calibrating what you should do based on that. Just because they say it doesn't mean you do it, but them saying something could give you an interesting new, idea on the situation, or make you understand more. You just need feedback. I think it's just a game of feedback. And oftentimes parents are ones that have no issues with giving feedback. I think parents often give too much feedback in many cases.
Yeah.
But these are people who are always willing to criticize you, compliment you, or not always compliment you, but always willing to tell you about yourself and give their opinion. So I think that's a resource. It could be a bad one, it could be a negative one, but I think
they ultimately have a good intention, even if that good intention is one that misaligns with yours. If maybe there's a status and yours is happiness, or vice versa. Yeah, but ultimately there is some good at the end of their advice, where some people will give you advice and either it's just something that worked for them and they know nothing about you. Yeah. Or they're giving you advice out of their own insecurity and fear. Yeah. And sometimes peers can do that when you're really excited about something, super passionate about something. Yeah. And they see it and they almost get scared. Am I not doing enough if they're doing this or something of the sort? And being able to parse the intentionality of the advice giver is seemingly what you're getting at. And that's really wise.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason unsolicited advice costs no money. But yeah, I think really thinking about critically, why is this person giving me this advice is the most important thing. The advice is not as significant as really understanding why they're giving it to you. Because once you understand that, now you have two pieces of information that you can make a much more educated, consequent decision based off of.
Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. So Tejes, you were telling me earlier today, you were chatting with a friend and you said, this is a story I need to tell later. Yeah. Can you share this with me, man?
Yes. Yeah. So I honestly haven't thought about this in a long time because nothing really significantly materialized from it. So when there's no big outcome after something, it's hard to think of it because it was an attempt and nobody really remembers attempts. But I do remember my sophomore year of college. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier when it comes to delusion. I think this is probably one of the most delusional things I've tried to do. So my sophomore year, UCLA puts on a bunch of big concerts. And there's one called Brew and Bash that's super big at the beginning of each year. And I really wanted to have Brew and Bash use Poppin. That'd be the best case because every student tries to go to Brew and Bash pretty much. So that was my genius plan as to how I can onboard an entire campus. But I did learn they wanted either money and there was some rules against not using another ticketing platform. And I essentially had no leverage, no value to offer them. We had pretty shitty product relationally, no money again, and nothing really to offer them besides the fact that we had, we wanted to do it.
You're a UCLA student.
That we're UCLA student, support UCLA entrepreneurs. And I think it's very hard when you start out something to build leverage. Because leverage is the best way to get deals done or things moving. And when you start and you don't have much experience and you're young and you don't have money and you don't have anything to really convince besides your words and the fact that you're young and you're trying hard, and that works with a very few people at the end of the day. So I had the idea, a lot of people were complaining to me, oh, Brew and Bash this year, it sucks, the headliner, no one wants to go see them, how is UCLA not getting? And I was yeah, why doesn't UCLA have a better headliner? This is no hate to the people who put on Brew and Bash, by the way. But there was a lot of people talking about this, and I was thinking, why can't there be an A-lister? Why is there no Travis Scott? Why is there no A$AP Rocky? Why is there no some big artist that everyone will go and see? It's UCLA at the end of the day. They need a big fucking artist, right? So I went to CEC, who puts on the concert, and I asked them. I said, hey, I'll get you a huge artist if we do it on Poppin. That was basically my pitch to them. And I obviously have, at this point, I've been in LA for 12 months, so I don't know any I don't know a single big artist.
Long trips haven't led to any chance encounters with YG? No.
Nothing. And I had a friend who owns a nightclub, and I was yo, put me in touch with somebody. And he put me in touch with the creative director for Trippie Redd, who was for me, was fuck, this is crazy. I don't know who this guy is. I had his number. And I texted him yo, I want to do
Trippie?
No, the creative director.
Okay.
I want to do a show with Trippie Redd. So while I was waiting for him to respond to me, I went and told CEC that I have Trippie Redd down to perform at UCLA. And then when he responded to me, he connected me with Trippie Redd's manager, who also manages a bunch of big artists. So I was actually pumped at this time that I was connected with this guy. So I told him that I have UCLA down to host Trippie Redd at Poly Pavilion, which we had not even talked about with them. But I had offered them Poly Pavilion, UCLA, like biggest show of the year. It's gonna be so good. I talked about how there's gonna be a bunch of students coming, creating content. Like this is like a UCLA show. This would be great for Trippie Redd. And I was negotiating booking prices. I thought, firstly, I was so out of depth. I thought booking fees. He said, how much could you offer? I said $3K, because I thought like that's a lot of money. Trippie Redd's gonna come perform. I was just an idiot. And he's like, our typical booking fee is like 200, 300K. And I was like, oh, typo. It's not a big deal. And I was just like rolling with it. So then I went back and told the UCLA events committee, I was like, guys, Trippie Redd's in. We need confirmation from you. And I went and told Trippie Redd's manager that UCLA is in. We need confirmation from you. So I told both parties that each other is down. And somehow, like, this college sophomore is like the arbiter of this transaction. And we're also going to use his app, which obviously at the time would not have been able to support it. But yeah, I worked really hard on this shit. Like I tried, and then ultimately they were like getting skeptical. Like the UCLA side was getting skeptical, and they were like, yo, like, how can we trust you? Like, how do we know Trippie Redd's gonna come? And then
is this communication all just via emails?
No, we had a couple Zooms. And yeah, I mean, so I tried it, and then they were skeptical. They're like, we don't really trust you, and UCLA is very bureaucratic, so it's extremely hard to get permission for anything.
Yep.
And then the biggest question is, where the fuck is the money coming from?
Yep.
Like, I assumed the UCLA budget was bigger than it was. It was not working, and then ultimately, it just kind of dissipated. The idea just kind of fell through. Still was a good experience. That taught me a lot about booking artists. Very hard, very, very hard process. But yeah, I guess my point is sometimes like you definitely have to like jumpstart your plans. And like now, like if I were to come up with a plan like that, I wouldn't even try, right? I would be like, there's no way I'm going to try to get Trippie Redd to play at UCLA. Like, how is that even going to happen?
Really?
Yeah, I mean,
that's the takeaway. It actually made you have a little bit more defeated mentality with like playing these games.
No. I guess my point is when you're younger and you're delusional, you have more of an appetite to try these crazy things. Like now, I'm too pragmatic. I'm gonna be like, why would I waste my time doing that? You see what I mean? So yeah. I still try to do those crazy things. We're building back up. We're doing a huge show, for example, next week with 1,000 people in a college we've never launched at. And we got like a rapper to come for that. So we're still pushing it, not to that level, but I guess the takeaway is like sometimes you have to like grease like some elbows and like say some shit that's not necessarily true. Like obviously don't lie with consequence. Like I was never lying like at anyone's expense, and I wasn't ever trying to make money from this at all. But you definitely sometimes have to be creative on getting things through the door. And this one didn't work, but I was thinking about it. I was like, damn, I'm really fucking crazy I was looking at the text with his manager, and I was like, fuck, I still have his number. So I texted him today, actually. I was like, hey, it's been a long time. We should connect. maybe we can do it now because we have some money to spend. But yeah, I don't know. That was kind of an interesting story to me.
Super
thinking
interesting
about the weird shit I was doing in my second year of college.
Yeah, I mean, it shows this knack that you have for, I think, storytelling. It's this ability to connect with people and build out what sounds the most beautiful in words. And then you had one massive institution and one massive individual seemingly almost connect. That's unreal, man. That's a dope story.
Yeah, I gotta do something more like that, honestly. Like it's on my bucket list to.
So you look back at that Tejes though, that version of you, and you're like, God, that Tejes is kind of badass.
No,
like,
I don't think of it with pride.
Yeah, I would.
You have to be willing to look like an idiot if you're trying to do something crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Like otherwise everyone would try it. So I definitely think like now would be smarter about things like that. But I think just the drive to do that. I used to send one cold email every night before going to sleep. Like that was one of my like heuristics to live by. I was like, it literally. That's
an absurd heuristic. That's so funny.
There was like literally there's no cost to sending a cold email. It takes 10 minutes. It takes 10 minutes, and like I never would write my cold emails like, hey, like I'm a student, like I'd love to get advice. It would always be some crazy shit. I'd be like, I fucking loved what you said on this podcast. If you have 15 minutes and you have nothing to do, call me at this number. Nothing really great came of any of them. To be honest, maybe my copy was bad.
This is not the toolkit. The
the
strat might be great, but
the strat was good. I mean, it worked. It worked at a lower level. Like I would do the same thing with like DMs for people I thought were cool, like seniors I thought were really cool. Like be like, yo, I really like this. Like we should talk. And I have made some really good friends from cold messaging or like whatever. I don't do it as much now, but I think at the time when I had less like leverage, I guess, and I was younger, and I was just very eager to learn because I was just starting from scratch essentially. That I had a lot more bandwidth to do things like that. Like I think I told you, we talked about this before, but I would also get lunch with someone when I had a meal plan with a different person every day, like at the dining halls, because I was like, I'm a skinny dude, I don't even eat that much, I can give extra swipes away. And if like for seniors who are like done cool shit and I can just like listen to them talk for an hour is like great. It's like a great experience. Like so yeah, I think trying to make that a routine is good, because it's one of those things that you only do when you're motivated. Like I've applied to the Teal Fellowship I think 4 times now or 5 times, I don't even know. But every time I applied was like 4 a.m., 5 a.m. I was looking at my past submissions. It was late night. Like I'd be like insanely motivated. Anytime I get like rejected from something, I'm like, I have to apply for this shit, or like email this. Like, I don't know. It's escapism in a sense. Like, fuck this. Maybe I won't get that, but I'll get the next thing. But I think that in terms of advice, I would definitely recommend like young people who are like starting out in something, like to just send cold messages. And obviously like make them like respectful and make them represent yourself in a good way, and make them entertaining. Like if somebody gets an email that they think is like very cookie cutter, there's no chance they're going to respond, right? Because there's so many times that they've seen this before, or heard of it before. You can definitely be more exciting with how you phrase things. So yeah,
I couldn't agree more. I think weird reach outs, I've done quite a few at this point, and that's one of the most powerful freaking things of online that we like still underestimate and we tease. It's like we're genuinely 1 degree of separation from every fucking person.
Yeah.
Like it's not like what it used to be. Social media is such an unlock, and as much as we want to shit on it for all of its ailments and ills, like it's freaking insane that like if you actually send a well-worded DM to someone that you admire insanely deeply, who's essentially a decade ahead of you, if you chose every single right decision for the next decade, you could be like them. There's like a high chance they respond potentially if you like actually write a really well-worded message. That's insane, man. That type of connectivity, and you really believe just in trying to utilize that in any way.
I mean, I think just generally like everyone is reachable, right? Obviously like different people have different constraints and willingness to do things, right? But if you make something interesting enough, like that same person you're reaching out to that would not want to respond was in your shoes at one point. So if in most cases they can respect it, right? And they don't have any like responsibility to respond. It's up to them. And it just doesn't hurt you though. It's free. Like sending a cold DM is free. It's like infinite positive EV is the way I think about it.
And remember that it's a person on the other end too. Like I mean, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's an agent. Sometimes like if you're really shooting for the stars, maybe sometimes you're not getting to them. You have probably 50 to 200 characters before they're going to completely scroll out of this message. And if you actually can use that well, it's pretty crazy the types of people that you can connect with.
I think one of the biggest things that people make mistakes on is their ask is wrong. Like they'll get the attention.
On that. I like that. What is that?
Like the ask in a cold message, right, is the most important thing. Because again, they at this point in time, these people are getting so many messages, right? But what you're asking for or what someone's asking for is typically the wrong thing. Like I would not want to, if somebody asked me like, yo, could we get on a call for 30 minutes and you tell me how you started Poppin, like, and give me advice. Like, as much as I'd want to do it, like 30 minutes to do that is not worth it because I've talked about it on the internet already. And like, I'm not the right person, in my opinion, to ask for advice on like general startups. My startup is not successful yet. Like it's doing all right. It's on the right trajectory, but I'm not equipped to give that advice. So I wouldn't do it, right? But on the same time, if you ask me for like 10 minutes, right? So firstly, you're asking for a smaller ask, like lower barrier to entry, right? Or I'm asking like, I'm not going to ask Tim Cook for 30 minutes of his time. Like that's why I'd always say, if you have 5-10 minutes, like don't even schedule with me. Like 5-10 minutes, you're bored, right? Here's my number. Just shoot me a call.
Yep.
Like that makes a big difference. And then I think what you're asking for too should be specific. Like people who are reached out to for advice have given a lot of advice before, and nobody likes repeating the same thing.
Mhm.
So if you're going to ask someone who's like super specialist in something very generic, I highly doubt they would respond, right? But if you ask them something that is like genuinely interesting to them, or like quick, or like punchy, or like fun for them, like how can you make it fun for them?
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of people should optimize for, is like, why am I actually reaching out to this person? Like, you have to ask your question. Ask
Yeah,
yourself
do you
that
really
question.
care? What was your favorite project at the company that you were working for?
Yeah.
No, you don't care.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. And they don't care,
They
probably.
don't. You're asking the question to seem smart. Like, you're not asking the question to become smart. You're asking it to seem like you're a certain way. And you have to think, like, why am I DMing this person? Like, why am I actually spending, like, what's the point, right? Nothing they say is going to change my life dramatically.
Mhm.
But I actually sent a cold email to Travis Kalanick 2 days ago. And the cold email was basically like, I mean, I would love to talk to him about so many things, but obviously, like, I don't expect him to respond. And if he sees it, I want it to make my ask something like tangible. And I literally asked him like a very specific question about scaling, like operations, because like that's something that he's done more successfully than anybody else. Like, he's the most equipped out of anyone to answer that question.
Who is Travis?
He's the founder of Uber, UCLA alum also. So my email was literally like, UCLA alum. Like, it was just literally like, I'm building this. It's like, I try to make it like similar to how he pitched Uber based on like research I did. Super short. Like, I know you're really fucking busy. I always like to curse too, because I read an article a long time ago that cursing actually makes people feel more authentic, because they don't really care as much as how they're perceived. And then in addition to that, cursing also just like gets people's eyes. Like, nobody curses in a professional context. So doing subtle things like that in a respectful, like classy manner, I think brings people to pay more attention. But anyway, my question was like super specific on something that they did specifically at Uber, because I genuinely want to know how he did that, because I think it could be applicable to what I'm doing.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's.
And what happened?
He's not responded yet.
Okay.
So we'll see. I mean,
I do have a story on this though too.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the people that you reach out to, this is one important thing about like an online presence. And I get in a lot of arguments with my friends about this, because they're like, see me kind of goofy for like actually optimizing on social media at times. But I just think like, it's like at this point caring about how you dress, where like genuinely online friends are such a freaking unlock, whether it be for your professional purposes, for relationship purposes, or just for beautiful people to be able to connect with and like share some of life's moments with. Some of my favorite people I've met in this world literally were because they DM'd me or some shit. And I mean, one recent one is a close friend named Victor, who like just like a year ago, I saw what he was doing. It was fascinating what he was doing. He was working on the Biden campaign at the time. And he just DM'd me regarding my travels and in Japan. And then we ended up connecting when I got back. And I was in New York last weekend. We grabbed dinner for like 4 hours. And now I'd say like he's genuinely one of my closest friends, just because he DM'd me on Instagram.
yeah,
Like, that's fucking absurd.
it's insane.
And I reached out to someone 3 days ago because I'm looking at buying my first property potentially. And it's a property that's really, really, really confusing, because it's only profitable if I essentially add units to the property, which for someone that's buying their first property, that's kind of a terrifying task, like doing added construction. And I found this guy that's supposedly like the god of this in the San Diego area on Instagram, and he creates a ton of content.
Yeah.
I DM'd him, gave him the exact scenario that I'm in,
Yeah.
told him about myself, that I'm like a young, hungry 22-year-old that's like really trying to figure this shit out. And it is so complex. And I really admire the content that he's putting out. And he replied literally within like, he replied at 2:30 a.m., which is also hilarious.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, dude, let's hop on a call. Let me know when.
Yeah.
Like, that's so damn sweet. And it's
That's
because
sick.
I treated him as a person.
Yeah.
You have like, just don't treat them as a bot. And I know like, just, I want to hear you, Tejes, tell me what you would respond to if you got a fucking LinkedIn DM or a Twitter or an X DM. Like, I know the ones that I respond to are the ones that are not listed like an email. I respond to the ones that say like, or the ones that empower me early. When somebody says something like, you inspired me with da-da-da, like inspiration is really where I derive a ton of my meaning. Feeling like I actually provided value, like that's so damn cool.
Yeah.
And then them wanting to double down on that, that makes me want to like get more invested.
Yeah.
If somebody's leading with like too much context about themselves, I might get bored. If somebody's leading with too many like just business qualifiers trying to seem hyper professional and hyper safe,
Yeah.
I might get bored. Like, I'm getting so many LinkedIn DMs from people that are pursuing jobs in major consulting firms.
Yeah.
But if you genuinely treat me as a person, you treat me with like, and I think that you're going to be an authentic person. I think that I might benefit from this chat because I might get clarity in my own thinking because you ask epic questions, or because you're somebody that I actually would want to get to know because you're as interesting or more interesting than me. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you respond to if somebody messaged you?
100%. Yeah. I mean, so I started shit posting on LinkedIn.
Pretty epic shit posting.
Memes and shit.
Yeah. One of my favorite ones was this summer it had the TikTok logo.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, did Tejes get an internship at TikTok?
Yeah, that one actually, that one is a funny story too. That one was the first one that really blew up. It got like millions of views. Someone at TikTok reached out or commented.
And but what was the end of the joke? The end of the joke was...
Oh, yeah. The joke was, I'm excited to announce that I'll be scrolling on TikTok this summer.
Yeah.
And a picture of TikTok. And it catches you by surprise. So, yeah, I mean, someone from TikTok responded or commented saying, like, excited to have you or, like, something funny. And I reached out saying, if you actually want to have me, we should set up a call. Because this is the time before I raised money. We set up a call, like, awesome guy. Got a lot of advice from him. And, like, he was basically, like, we were talking about, can I work at TikTok this summer? Because I've never recruited for a job in my life, besides being like a soccer referee and a DoorDash driver. I've never like sent my resume around or like whatever. The only time I made a resume was for like consulting clubs and college clubs in general. So
hard.
Yeah. So I was like talking to him and I was exploring it, and then I realized, you know what, fuck it. Nah, I'm gonna work on Poppin, and then shortly after we raised money. So that was a good decision.
So you had a conversation with some dude at TikTok that comments on your post
about working there.
Yeah. and then he had enough power to actually give you a job offer.
Yeah, not a formal job offer, but like that trajectory. We didn't like,
that's crazy.
Yeah,
though.
But he was like, the startup school, you should keep working on it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, yeah, you know what, you're right. And then the rest is what's happening now. But based on like shit posting, like, yeah, I would post like memes. Like I realized like everyone on LinkedIn is posting this pre-canned nonsense, respectfully. Like,
yeah.
and I don't say that like people are just fake on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like nobody like talks like that.
Which makes kind of good sense because we still live in like a dino culture.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of terrifying that like, okay, you might lose your job if you talk about the wrong thing. Like, I mean, I did a post the other day on therapy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't think there's any dark stigma surrounding therapy anymore. So I think I'm safe. But even that, I had to question in my head.
Yeah.
And like, this is the platform where like authenticity maybe isn't as hyper appreciated. But
yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, and then I mean I kind of realized that, and I was like, you know, I would love to just post funny stuff. So I was like, as someone who was not looking for a job at the time, I was like, fuck it, like I'm not gonna get fired right now. I don't even have a job, so let me post this shit on LinkedIn. So yeah, I got a lot of followers off that, and then as a result, I posted about my journey with Poppin and how we were expanding, and you know, like all the successes we've been having in general, and then by virtue of that, I got a lot of people who reach out to me on LinkedIn. I try to respond as much as I can, honestly, but like it's very repetitive in the sense that it's like one advice that like there are other people who are better at giving it than me, and it's like widely available online. Like I genuinely don't feel like I would add any tangible value besides the fact that like we just talk. And then second, like it's a lot of people is like, oh, we should connect, like we should chat, and like I would be very open to that earlier on when I had a lot more free time, but now I just don't have free time. And like my biggest question is like about what? Like what do you want to chat about? You know, not that I'm against it, but I just need to know what before we commit. Funny story though, I got a DM from this guy this summer. He and a lot of people who DM me are users, which is always great. Those people I always respond to because we just talk about the product and I like to geek out on it, and they get to give us feedback and whatnot. But this guy DM'd me, longest fucking LinkedIn DM I've ever seen in my life. It was longer than the Bible. It was like I didn't know you were allowed to send that many characters. Like it was so long, and it was just about like, hey, I went to UC Davis. I use Poppin. I love it, but I noticed there's these things you can improve. I just graduated. I'm looking for a job. Like, can I? And it was really long. And then he sent it, and then like 2 hours later, he's added to it like a list of ideas that Poppin should do. And one of the ideas was like Poppin should bring Drake for a concert. And I was like, this is like bizarre. Like, who the fuck? Like, how are we gonna get Drake? Like, this is a terrible idea. Like,
we can get Trippie Redd, but not Drake.
Yeah. I mean, I was out of that phase. Maybe 2 years ago, I would have been excited by that. But I was like, what is this guy talking about? And then he DM'd me again with more ideas. And I was like, this guy's like relentless. Like, he just keeps DMing me. And I was like, you know what? Like, let me challenge myself. I'm going to take the meeting. Like, fuck it. You know, he basically was asking to work for the company in like product management. We don't hire product managers. Like we only have like one person and it's me. And then, or like sales. And like, even that, like we weren't really hiring. Anyway, I get on the call. I start talking to the guy. In 15 minutes, I hired him. I kid you not. 15 minutes, I hired him. And this was the fastest I've ever hired anyone in my life. We get on the call. I could just tell by the way he was talking that he loves this app so fucking much because it changed his college experience. And I could tell from the way he was describing, he built like 3 of his own apps and like marketed them himself. And like, this guy is fucking phenomenal. I was like,
wow.
I was like, this guy's like incredibly hardworking. Like in 10 minutes, I was like, I'm gonna stop you right here. I'm going to hire you. Let's talk about what you're gonna do. Like, I was like, this guy's so good that even though we didn't have a vacuum on the team, like he needs to be on the team. Like there's no way around it. So I hire him. Like we agree. I was like, I'll pay you this much for a couple weeks. If it works out, we'll discuss full time. If not, this was 3 months ago, by the way, when we were in SF working in the office. And we're like, okay, if it works, it works. And then if not, it doesn't. And I'm like, where do you live? He's like, Sacramento, because he went to Davis. I was like, we have an office in SF. You can just do remote. He's like, no, I'll be there. I was like, are you sure? It's a 2-hour drive. For the next couple of weeks, he was in the office at 9 a.m. He drove 2 hours each way every day. We hired him full time. He's relocated to LA. His name is Jackie. Shout out to Jackie. He is the best like hire, I think, in terms of like time we spend looking for somebody and like the amount he got. He does like so much stuff for the team. He's a great person to have on the team as like an individual. He's an awesome person. And then on top of that, he executes on everything like to the highest level. And like in hindsight, I was thinking like after I talked to him, I realized that his idea of the Drake thing was not like delusion. It was like ambition. And yeah, I mean, since he's joined the team, he's been like game changer. And he is already like solidified for us like a partnership with like a huge creator that we work with a lot now through a cold DM. So the same tactic he used on me, he used on somebody else, and he's like got so many like things done for the company through cold DM. So yeah, so my point is like there's a lot of value in DMs for the people who are receiving them. Like everyone gets DMs, cold DMs. Like I think it just comes to having a good barometer as to like what you should take and what you shouldn't. And this one like was the best meeting I've ever taken. So yeah, this was interesting because this DM was not at all what I would normally respond to. But yeah, I think that's kind of a thing, that opportunities everywhere, and you can never like get complacent with like where you are, and always be like willing to listen and like get feedback and talk to the right people, because this was a huge unlock for us. So shout out to Jackie. Sorry for the long segue, but
no, I love that. Insane. No, but there's so much to that. There's the craziness in this dude thinking like, yeah, I'm gonna get a job from sending a 8-paragraph thing in a LinkedIn DM, or wherever it was. Like that's pretty chaotic. But that also, I think that in itself, you were like, okay, at this point, this chat I'm invested in, even if he like has nothing value additive. This is hilarious.
Yeah, like I was just like I have
this kid's too committed.
Like I have to understand. Like I have to talk to him.
Yeah.
And in 10 minutes, like I feel like my radar on people is pretty decent. Like specifically because I immerse myself in meeting so many people that like I can somewhat pattern recognize how someone would turn out to be. And in 10 minutes, I was like, this is gonna be the hardest working, most intelligent person I could hire. And again, we hired him without a role for him. Like we've never done that before. But now like he almost created a role within the team for himself because he's that good. So like, yeah, I think when it comes to DMing, like a lot of opportunities, I feel like as you get older, and like you said, now that you have a job, like there's a lot of people who are going to DM you. And obviously like it's easy to feel like, oh yeah, I'm cool. Like people want to talk to me. Like that's one side of it. Like people often get lost with, but I think a lot of the DMs that I've gotten have given me so much value, and I genuinely try to take as many of them as I can, as long as they make sense. But yeah, again, like you said, you're 1 degree of connection from everybody.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you need an intro to an intro to an intro. You can literally make it happen, and you can find creative ways to do it. And they can have great outcomes.
And yeah, just respecting the convenience of the individual too. Like, I am constantly driving to like the gym or the beach or whatever, something like that. And like, I'll probably just listen to music if it's only gonna be like a 10 to 15 minute drive.
Yeah.
But I could also probably plug in a call.
Yeah.
So if like somebody I love your strategy of saying like, don't try to build 30 minutes, don't try to build an hour, try to get 5.
Yeah.
And if you can't sound interesting enough or ask a good question in 5, that's on you.
Yeah.
But you can potentially turn 5 into something meaningful.
The 5-minute strategy, like, I've done it a lot. Like, I'll be like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The call has never been shorter or as long as that. It's always gone on for like 30 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people will do the things that are intellectually stimulating to them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it works,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's on you in that time to make it meaningful and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had like 2-hour calls with some of the people that I've cold DM'd. And again, making it as easy for them as possible, like, is the most important thing.
You're a fantastic communicator, Tejes, and I just want to linger on this because I want to understand your strategies for being able to connect with like essentially anyone, if it can be a mentor or a mentee, or just being able to read people quite well too. Like, I've been thinking a lot. I've been chatting with friends that like, I feel like the only strategy that actually works for me consistently or reliably is leading with intensive curiosity and trying to lead with a real lack of insecurity and just empowering the other individual and then allowing me to come out in interesting ways throughout the conversation, but lead with listening and lead with curiosity. But honestly, if I characterize you, I do think you're a fantastic listener, but you almost have a little bit of a different way about you. And I'm just kind of curious if you have any frameworks or any ways that you think about casual conversation or communication or connecting that you can share that you think are like kind of effective strategies for you.
Yeah, no, firstly, I appreciate it. And I think you're a great communicator. So you telling me that makes me feel really good.
Thanks, brother.
But I think, yeah, I mean, to start, the biggest thing is being authentic. I think everyone can tell if someone's like being authentic, like inauthentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I almost hate people who are like, I know hate's a strong word, but I almost get more irked by people who are inauthentic than people who are authentic and annoying. Like, people who like are people pleasers or like always compliment you or say nice things too much, and you can tell tell why they're saying it. It just makes me feel like they're not, I can't really trust them. So I think the first thing is coming off like, this person is who they seem to be. So I just try to like be as much as myself as possible and do what instinctually feels right. And then secondly, there's a couple ways to seem authentic also. It's like I said, cursing is the best one. Like, I'm not going to filter what I'm going to say. Like, I know you're going into consulting, but like, I'm not going to not tell you that I think that you can do something better. You know what I mean? Respectfully. Like, that's just like, I have to say it. And like, even if that's something that's annoying and painful in the short term, in the long term, people can look at you as somebody who is authentic and is going to, stick to what they believe in. And like, known quantities in people is what we look for, because if someone's unpredictable and you can't really rely on them for anything, and it makes your life more confusing and challenging. The second thing I think is, honestly, like you said, listening and asking questions. People love to talk about themselves. And if you can align yourself to genuinely be interested, then you can be authentic and you can just ask questions and you can learn from them. And a lot of people, I think, don't do a good job of, or rather do a bad job of either asking too many questions, because it should not ever feel like an interview, right? But at the same time, talking too much. And, like, there's a balance. And I think that balance just comes from paying attention. That's the easiest thing. The easiest way to connect with someone is to actually look them in the eyes and like pay full attention, because most people aren't paying attention. Like, they're not. And then the trick that I have to making people pay attention when I talk, I think that's what I'd characterize someone convincing as. It's not just someone who has good logic or like has like, I guess, a relative amount of charisma. It's somebody who can get you to pay attention. Couple ways is just one, the way you speak, like fluctuating your tonality, changing the speed at which you say things, like saying interesting things is the biggest thing. Like, it's the biggest thing. Like, sometimes you have to say something a little bit crazy to get people to pay attention. Like, I think that is honestly a big deal. And on LinkedIn, for example, when I got a lot of like views on my posts, it's not because I was posting good content on LinkedIn. It's because I was posting things that people hadn't seen before or seen much of. And they're like, wait, I have to like follow up with this or like read this or like it. Like, doing something that people don't expect is good in social situations. Like, you have to be a little crazy. And that can come through humor. That can come through just like just having like a random idea or being spontaneous about things. And I think that will make people pay a lot more attention. Like we're humans at the end of the day. We want to be intellectually stimulated. We want to release dopamine. And when you talk to someone who's monotonous and like isn't really like saying anything of substance and is being monotonous, you're not going to pay attention. It's like that. It's in middle school. I learned this thing like that. People trust the weatherman who's more confident than the meteorologist that's more confident in presentation rather than the meteorologist who's more accurate. Because they're not going to come back and be like, oh, he's wrong. It didn't fucking rain today. Because this guy fucking gets on camera and tells me it's going to be a bright, sunny day and makes me feel good. And not to say you should be misleading, of course, but the point is, like, people want to be entertained. People will listen to you if you're entertaining. And obviously, like, social media and whatnot has taken that to another extreme where we have these different, like capacities, like through video, audio, LinkedIn to, like, get people's attention. But I think in one-on-one conversation, it's the most fun because you don't have to, like, stretch the truth to be entertaining. You can just be an interesting person.
No, I love this, and I love, so ultimately, like, what I hear is like it's authenticity and entertainment. Those are like the two key attributes. And some people aren't that entertaining. But honestly, hyper authenticity, if you actually kind of know yourself, if you've actually done some self work, that's super entertaining. If you know a little bit about your shadow, and you're not you shouldn't be hyper vulnerable, obviously, in a lot of scenarios, but like being able to like recognize and self deprecate and like know where your flaws are. Like, people love problem statements. People love problem people. People love trying to solve, like, and give advice. If I hear somebody else describing the issues in their life, like, my natural tendency, and maybe it's problematic, maybe it's maybe I'm too much of this, but I want to try to give a solution. I'm like, even if it's like a stupid ass problem, I'm like, that is completely on you. Like, even though I'm like, the solution is so damn obvious, and you could probably hear it from like so many other people that's not me, and I'm probably not going to articulate it any better. I'm still like, I need to give you a solution. So I think, like, if you don't have this entertaining characteristic to you, or you don't really know what makes you entertaining, and you're not like Tejes and just dropping dope tweets and like pretty like honestly pretty fascinating and provocative and like willing to ask whys, which I want to get to in a moment. But I think hyper authenticity can compensate for a lack of entertaining. And ultimately, entertaining, though, like, that is just crucial. You're going to keep me on the call. You're going to keep me for more than 5 minutes. I mean, and I think that's one of the cool things about practicing content creation, because you start to realize that this actually transcends content. This is how all conversations kind of occur. Somebody tunes out after like 1 or 2 sentences if you're not actually being interesting and provocative. I love that. And I want to get to just this one other aspect that I think is super important in these types of conversations with people. And that's not asking the what's. Don't ask the what's. Like, especially like what was your favorite project you worked on? Like, that was the example I gave earlier. And I'm sure that you get tired if somebody ever asks you, like, what was it like starting Poppin? Like, but if they said, like, why the hell did you start Poppin? Like, why did you, or not, that might not have the level of specificity. But if they asked you like a why, like, I feel like that to you, especially just because you're like a philosophical person, and that probably makes you just have a little itch of your own curiosity start to occur. Like, you start to do some introspection. And if somebody's provoking introspection for introspective people, that's an awesome thing. I think reading cues, though, too. If you're chatting with someone who's kind of an NPC, I mean, probably going the introspective route might actually be the dangerous route. Maybe going the entertaining and I need corpo advice route is safe. But if you're chatting with, like, know your audience. But oftentimes, a lot of people are much more introspective than we give them credit for. Giving them time and capability to introspect, like, and allowing the conversation to not just serve you, but allow them to verbalize and allow them to get more clarity in their own life. That's pretty fantastic. What do you think about that?
Definitely. No, I agree. I mean, the question, how's your day going? Like, I think 1% of people give an honest answer to that question. If someone asks me, yo, how's your day going? It's great. Like, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about my day. You know what I mean? It's we've heard it so many times. So also, I think part of what you say, there's like a novelty to it. Like, if you're saying things that a lot of people talk about, which is part of the reason I didn't want to start with a story of like how I started Poppin. It's just like, I've said it so many times. It's not even fun for me to say it. So I just don't want to. Even though I love the story, but I've said it so many times on different things that I'd rather uncover something new with you through our conversation. And then, sorry, can you remind me of the question? I distracted myself.
Dude. Well, I was just honestly ranting about my own view of like why questions.
Yeah,
And getting
yeah.
getting people to introspect
Yes.
is sometimes the best way to keep them interested in you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think firstly, most people don't ask the why question for most of the things they do.
Yeah.
Right. Like they ask it in a very facile manner where they're thinking of it's hard. That's why it takes mental energy and attention, which we don't like to spend. And as a result, people give or come up with simple answers. I think people don't spend enough questions on the whys of their life, right? And the whys are often hard. And I think sometimes people try to overcomplicate what the why is. Like, if I were to say I started Poppin because I wanted everybody to be able to find a party and feel loved and connected, I'd be lying. That's not why I started it, right? I started it out of purely selfish reasons. But when I saw the power that it could create for other people, that's why I'm still doing it. You see what I mean? Like, I didn't sit in my like bedroom with a whiteboard and like be like, how can I connect the whole world? I didn't give a fuck about that.
I love serendipity.
Yeah. Like, that's bullshit. Like, I mean, it's not bullshit. It's true. Like, now, that's what energizes me now. But I was like, I want to throw a party. I don't know how to. I don't have the tools or the network to get people there in the first place. And it'd be sick to learn how to build an app. And I did it, and purely selfish. And like, I wasn't trying to like have any great mission or vision or anything. I just did that. The first time I did it, it worked. And then made me think about it more. And then when I thought about the fact that there's so many powerful things that this could unlock, and I thought about the fact that this could be something that's aligned with the impact I want to have in the world, I was like, fuck yeah, I want to do this. Because not only is it going to make me feel good on a day-to-day basis, but it's achieving my higher level goals. Where nobody's like maybe you, because you're very philosophical, but not many people are walking around on a daily basis thinking about their purpose. Like, we're distracted by so many different things, right? So most of the whys that we have in our life are not the actual whys. They're like products of hindsight,
like
bias.
4 degrees of separation.
Yeah, it's like,
separation from that actual
like,
ultimate why. Yeah.
Why consulting? You know what I mean? Like, that question. Like, when I was applying,
I can hit you with this, but let's go for it.
Yeah, I mean, the why consulting question is like the same, or like why investment banking, why software engineering. Like, I want to solve problems that are, you know, interdisciplinary.
And they answer, and like most people, they'll answer it like it's the interview.
Yeah.
And that, like, nobody just wants to solve problems because nobody wants to just build skills. Yeah. That's not a why.
Yeah.
That's like like your end purpose in life is to build skills. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's part of my like issue that I take with like corporate life in general is that, like, even if you were to give the most authentic answer in that case, you would not make it through the next round. So your success is not correlated with how authentic or honest you are. It's with how consensus you can be. And I think that's the biggest difference between large organizations and startups, right? I think it's my like favorite quote that Naval said, which is that large groups of people seek consensus, whereas small groups of people seek the truth. And the why consulting question, if your honest answer is just, I want a big name on my resume, I want to travel, and I want 100K plus a year so that I can become like financially stable and increase my sexual market value, if that's someone's actual answer, and they say that, it's honestly very respectable, for being honest. Because honesty should be rewarded, but they're not going to be rewarded for that because large organizations cannot function on people being honest all the time. They have to be consensus all the time, which makes sense. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but for people who really value honesty and authenticity, I think the startup route makes a lot more sense, because you can say a bunch of like stupid shit and like piss people off, but if you're directionally correct and you are doing something that long term is going to work out because it solves a pain point and it adds value to a bunch of people's life, like the other semantics and finer points don't really fucking matter, right? Because unless you do something immoral, which should not be permissible in any case, no one's going to stop using your product because you are like, you know, immature on social media and post things about like flexing your money. If your product's great, they're going to use it.
If the product's great, but it's definitely not helping you get.
It's not helping you, and I don't think anyone should be fucking annoying. But the point is, authenticity, at the end of the day, is what I think should be rewarded, which oftentimes gets very neglected.
But eventually, if Poppin actually gets big enough, you're probably going to have to renav a little bit,
100%,
and recalibrate. And it's definitely.
Like there's a reason it's done, right? It's because it works, right? But I mean. Yeah, I mean, I
think shit's changing though. But
I think it is changing too, and it makes sense. Like even compared to how we started out, like the way the team communicates is very different now, right? We're a lot more corporate, we're a lot more proper, and that makes sense because when there's so many people, right, you don't want to run the risk of offending anybody and making them feel like they're not valued there. You don't want to. You still want to deal with that stuff. So being the most honest and authentic oftentimes is a waste of fucking time. Because if you really want to get work done, there's no 3 hours a day to talk about what each person meant and understand their perspectives. Like you're all there to get a
really
job
quick,
done.
dude, sorry for interrupting you, but I think one danger with honesty and authenticity, because I think I'm hyper vulnerable, and it actually has served me wrong in certain scenarios because I index so much to the extreme, and I forget that for some people, talking about like an obstacle you went through, people will be like, oh, that's so courageous that you talk about that obstacle. And that obstacle will be like beating some like disease. It will be like for me, I like lost my ability to read due to a rare form of epilepsy for like quite a while. And people will be like, it's so courageous that you can talk about that. Like, what? Why is that courageous?
Yeah.
Like, I take pride in that shit. Like, it was a fucking disease. Courageous is talking about the dark shit. It's talking about those thoughts that creep up on you that you have no control over, that are actually unpleasant, and verbalizing that to someone else.
Yeah.
And you tell somebody that, and you know it's a bad thought. That's courageous.
Yeah.
That's your shadow fully showing.
Yeah.
It's not courageous you're essentially virtue signaling when you talk about your own obstacles or little triumphs in that way.
I mean, yeah.
So I think but I want to talk about, I think that hyper vulnerability and honesty can actually be dangerous in a lot of contexts with people that we want to be authentic with. I think sometimes, even with our best friends, like you can be honest and authentic sometimes, and they'll hear it as, okay, if this is what he's willing to say, I wonder what other skeletons are really in his closet. Because I think we have an assumption. A lot of people have a presumption with most people. And I think I've lost this presumption with a lot of people. But I think a lot of people still hold this idea that whatever you're willing to say is half as bad as like the darkest thing in your brain. Because that's how most people operate themselves. So if you're communicating with people that might have that presumption, it can be really dangerous to be fully vulnerable and fully authentic. What do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to your point about courage, I think courage is doing something or saying something at risk of yourself. You know what I mean? Like, it's not courageous for you necessarily to talk about it, like in the case of your disease, because it shows you in a positive light. You beat it, right? Maybe the person who called what you were saying courageous is imagining themselves having difficulty in that situation. Maybe that's why they see it as courage. But in terms of being honest and authentic, there's a time and a place. My sister told me this quote. It's very good, so there's no chance she made it up. I'm fucking around. No, but my sister came up with this quote that I honestly really like. Or yeah, she told me this quote. I don't know if she came up with it. But it's, honesty without tact is cruelty. So being extremely honest and authentic is a positive thing, because from a social context, it enables, like I said, people to think of you as a consistent person. They know what your cards are, right? They know who you are. But if we had infinite time, everyone would always be honest and authentic. If you really think about it, telling lies or obfuscating the truth or pleasing someone is really just a time saver. You know, it's not that people want to lie. There's a reason people lie and take shortcuts and get by things, just because they don't want to spend the time doing it. So I do agree. And then obviously at a big company, when you have directionality, you know you're successful, you just need to get things done on an execution level, it makes sense as to why you're not as honest with each other, because you're optimizing to save time. But in a startup, when you don't even fucking know if you're going the right direction, you need to be honest. You need to be playing with the truth on a daily basis and figuring out what's actually right and what's wrong and what's not the right place to go. So yeah, I think it comes down to directionality. Like, when you know you're headed in the right direction, or you know you need to get this done, like, that's when you probably are not going to be as honest. And like, people just don't have the time to unpack it. They don't have the energy, right? Like, I mean, even if I think of my greatest friendships or closest relationships, like, if we were to just sit and like air everything out in terms of just being brutally honest and like going through everything, right? It would go on forever. It would take so long. And yes, that might ultimately strengthen the friendship, but at that point, you're losing a bunch from the rest of your life, because you'd spent the last week unpacking this and being emotionally down from this. You know, like, it's a time-saving mechanism. So I think you have to pick
No,
and
I'm
choose.
sitting with it now. So honesty without tact is cruelty.
Yeah.
Okay, and tact, and essentially in this, it
Tact
means
is
like
just-
intention. It means
Yeah,
like
tact
like
is-
a meaningful reason why.
Yeah, or no, honesty without tact is cruelty means like, hey, like you can communicate your intention and the meaning you want without having to put them down. Because at the end of the day, everyone's emotions are independent to them, and being brutally honest doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do. Like your goal is not to hurt them. You know what I mean?
In your brutal honesty, like honesty doesn't mean truthfulness.
Yeah, it doesn't. It means
Like,
it's a subjective opinion.
Yeah, it means that like you have some absurd thoughts that go through your brain that
Exactly.
like, okay, so what is the facts?
It's an honesty is just the true reflection of your perspective.
Mm.
It's not anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one thing that I want to hit on before we call it, I asked you for anything that you'd like to talk about, and you said people sucking at things. That was something meaningful for you to speak about. Please
Yeah.
explain what this means.
Yeah. So I'm actually like working on like an essay for myself about this. And it's part of the reason I'm really like happy and grateful to be still a student, or like around college rather, is you get to see so many people. And that's so much data if you're someone like me who is interested in people and the way they think and why they make decisions. I was actually at a Bruin Consulting coffee chat, which of course is the club that we both were in. And I'm not active in any of the clubs I was in, but I always go for recruitment because you just get to meet so many new people. You get energy of like fresh young people like coming to make a mark and a name for themselves on the campus. And it's just interesting as somebody who like has to think about hiring a lot, about how I would evaluate people. Like evaluating people is really fucking hard because it's one, who they are, and then two, who they're coming off as, and then three, who they're trying to be. Like there's these three things you're trying to grapple with.
I love that.
And make a decision that's best for you and what you're trying to achieve. So anyway, there's these coffee chats, and I essentially found a candidate that I was like in my head, my mental note was like, yeah, there's like no way he's getting in. Like he's just not like a good fit for the club. And I was like, why? Like I was like socially, like he was unaware of what was going around. Like he wasn't picking up cues. Like he wasn't like he just wasn't there. Like, and it's a consulting club, and that's a very people oriented role. And I was like, damn, this guy sucks. And I was like, that's kind of mean. Like, why am I like putting someone down in my head? Like, why do I think he sucks? Like, and just because he sucks at this one thing, why do I think that he sucks at everything? Right? And I realized that I've noticed this with a lot of people around me, and specifically myself as well, is we have this tendency to generalize that if someone sucks at something, they just suck overall. So if you suck at, writing, you probably suck at like riding a bike. You probably suck at like typing. You probably suck at like eating. You suck at everything. Like, like we think of people so unidimensionally, specifically when we don't know them. And I was thinking, there's always going to be candidates that come across like they suck. And when I say suck, I mean they just seem like they're not fit for what they're going for. And I was like, yeah, okay, this guy sucks. And I was thinking about it later in the day, and I was like, what makes someone suck at something? Right? Like what actually makes them suck at something? Barring like obviously like difficulties they have like accessing something, or like a physical difference or a neurodiverse like difference that they can't control. If someone is like bad at something, why are they bad at it? And I was thinking about it more and more, and I realized that oftentimes the people that I've come across that are really bad at something are the ones that are really good at something. And I was like, why is that? Because realistically, when we're born, we're not given like this divine like talent. Like there's very few people with like divine talents for things. Like obviously like Victor Wembanyama was born 7'4", like he's probably gonna be pretty fucking good at basketball. But most people aren't born with that. So most people aren't born with like a divine deficit or a divine benefit at anything, right? They're just like kind of like middle of the pack, like in terms of like standard deviation. They're somewhere around the middle. And we really get good at the things that we spend a lot of time doing. So I was thinking about my friends who are more introverted but like better at like coding, and I think about them, and growing up they spent a lot of time solving puzzles, like playing video games, like spent indoors reading books, and now like solving those problems on computers in a tangible sense makes a lot of sense for them. And then I was thinking about myself, like I grew up with my parents like taking me to like meet their friends, and I grew up like playing with a lot of kids, like my neighbors, and I spent a lot of time like around people. And I feel like people have always told me that my strength is talking to people or like connecting with people. And I realized you really are just good at what you've spent your time doing. Specifically, when you're younger and your brain is more plastic and you're learning things at a rapid rate. And I realized that this heuristic, when you meet people from a perspective of you're evaluating them, if they suck at something, that's almost a green flag. If they're really bad in a social setting, in many cases, and of course, all of this is relative, and again, barring all like things you can't change about yourself differences, right? Of course, everyone's different and everyone's good at something, right? But in this setting, if this candidate was so like socially inept for this scenario, like there must be something really awesome about him. And I was just thinking that I need to flip the way I think about that. That generalization, firstly, it's negative, so it's something that no one should make, but I'm just being honest. It's something that I do. I'm pretty sure everyone does it.
Yeah.
But if somebody is making those assumptions about someone, they should also think about the fact that they probably just haven't spent much time in those situations. So yes, I'm bad at this, or yes, they're bad at that. But they probably, if they're so bad at that, that means so much of their time went elsewhere, and they're probably really fucking good at something else. And I did some research after. I went back to look at that candidate, and little did you know it, like they were like ranked very, very highly in the world for a very technical type thing. And I was like, that makes so much sense to me. And so I just thought of it like as a heuristic that when you're looking at people to hire, like we always look for people who are like amazing or like well-rounded, but like you should almost look for people who are terrible at something. Like, why are they so bad? Like the people I know who can't code to save their life, like they literally cannot write one line, are the smoothest talkers that can just go schmooze anyone and like convince anyone of anything type of people. The people who write the most brilliant code that I know. I mean, I'm operationalizing it in a context that I'm familiar with, which is like startups and like business-minded people and, you know, more technical people. The people who are like geniuses when it comes to writing code sometimes like deal with difficulties with communicating like with other people and like doing those group discussions. And it really made me realize that we are just products of where we spend our time. So looking at the present, you know, when you meet someone, figure out what they suck at. Like it's almost a green flag if they really suck at something, not the other way around. And on looking forward in the future, realize that if you want to be really good at something, you need to think about where you're spending your time right now. It's not about taking a class or getting a degree or getting this job. Like, what do you spend? You have 24 hours in a day. You're spending like 8 of it sleeping, let's say. Where are the other 16 going? Like, are you writing code? Are you talking to people? Are you reading books? Are you like painting? Like, that's the thing you're going to be really good in 10 years. And the thing you're neglecting is probably the thing you're going to suck at. And I just thought it was this really interesting heuristic. And obviously, it's like not perfect and everyone is different. And some people are awesome at a lot of things. And, you know, there's all sorts of things that people are gifted with and not. But I think it's just like very, very fascinating if you're evaluating people and you want to figure out more about them. Like also in these processes, it's very hard to like think of each person as an individual, right? You're looking through so many people. But like, yeah, for anyone out there who's like hiring or looking for a co-founder or like even looking for friends, like realize that there's a lot more to people. And sometimes them being really bad at something is better than them being slightly good at something or slightly bad at something. So yeah.
I love that. And I want to linger on that for one moment. I do think it's super amplified in environments that already had a filter for you being good at something. Like UCLA, like, okay, if somebody sucks at something at UCLA, like there's almost a certainty that they're exceptional somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I really like what you were saying, like about in your youth, where you allocate your time. It oftentimes, and I kind of am stealing some language from Atomic Habits, identity precedes practice. And practice, though, comes often, or that identity typically comes from something so damn simple when you're little. It's that for you, it's being told, man, you are so good at connecting with others. You are so charismatic. Little 7, 8-year-old you was hearing this and was like, hell yeah, I am.
Yeah.
And then you just kept on wanting to be in those environments that would excite you because they would give you this positive reinforcement of you are freaking excellent.
Yeah.
And that environment was the practice. That was the training arena.
Yeah.
And then that identity preceded you basically amplifying that identity.
Yeah.
It's
It compounds. It fully compounds.
It's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's try this.
It's really what you make yourself out to be, right? Like you are in between who you are and who you're trying to be oftentimes. And I think that recognizing your own strengths and really seeing yourself for who you are. That self-awareness is extremely important, not only on a professional scale because it helps you, navigate situations and optimize for things you're good at, but obviously on a personal level, immensely. I think that's secretly the goal. That's something that I have a goal with for everything I build, is to accelerate self-awareness for myself and everyone around me. Like, again, this is not like something that I was like, this is my goal and I'm going to build Poppin and build other things around it. It's something that I built and I learned, like, wow, this is like something that's meaningful to me. It's something that I would like, kind of a big vision to rein in all my products under. And I just think it's a really powerful thing. And yeah, I think there's just a lot of like negativity. Like the biggest thing I think about is like, there's so much negativity out there, like in my head, in like everyone's head, and the internet. Like it's so easy to compare yourself, to hate on somebody. Like it's just easy as fuck. Like I almost like I try right now. Like if I ever find myself like shit talking somebody or like complaining about something, I'm just like, it's so easy to do it. But I really try to, like, one of my goals is to like just think of myself like a loser when I do it. Like it's so easy to like criticize people, and like this was an eye-opening recent experience for the subject, I guess, is like seeing someone be really bad at something, but like we're immediately like so quick to compare ourselves, like, oh, I could do that way better. You know what I mean? Like that those ideals are so much in place. So yeah, challenging yourself when it comes to that is super important, and I think makes you ultimately a happier person. And it's not something you can turn off. Like you're biologically programmed to compare yourself with others, but doing it in a restrained manner and in a mindful manner, I think can make a huge impact on the outcome of someone's life.
I love that point too, of just observing your judgments. There's usually a really, really fascinating aspect of yourself within it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I find my most intense judgments, if there's a lot of emotion surrounding it, it's coming from a place of insecurity.
Yeah.
Or it's coming from some odd arena that I need to do some more introspection on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just love the idea of observe the judgments and at times try to come to a little space of non-judgment.
Yeah.
And that's when you can truly be curious and truly learn about someone and find out what makes them remarkable.
Exactly.
Because I don't know for you, but I know for me, most of my best friends were people that if I judged them based on their first impression, they would not be my best friends.
Yeah, of course.
They were people that I read the first 4 chapters and didn't just look at the cover.
Yeah.
And then I realized, holy shit, I need to read to the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, I really love that. Your points here of just like seeing the flaws and assuming that means there's a strength.
Yeah. And again, the worse the flaws, the bigger the weakness, the bigger the strength on the other side.
Yeah, the likelihood that there was an allocation of resources elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, last question, man. What is the ultimate scarce resource?
I would say it's mindfulness to what's happening around you. Like, if you're truly living in the moment, the construct of time or the lack of it doesn't seem to bother you as much. But actually being like stimulated, de-individuated, focused on everything that's happening around you is incredibly difficult and obviously impossible to do 24/7. But my point is, if you're doing it right, there is no concept of what 24/7 is. It's just the moment itself. And I think that when it comes to personal life, professional life, anything you do really, being able to focus on what you're saying and what you're doing and just what's happening around you is like the most powerful thing. And that's very scarce because especially now there's so many distractions, I would say. And like life itself sets up a lot of natural obstacles to achieving that, because you have to pay rent, you have to go work, you have to do this, you have to, there's so many things. But training your mind to really focus on every single thing you're doing and doing it with 100% effort and mindfulness and consciousness, I think is really special, and it's very scarce, and it should never be taken for granted.
I love that, man. Thanks for chatting with me, Tejes.
Thank you, bro. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. I would love your feedback on ways this pod can better serve you. guests you'd like me to have, topics to cover, or just tease my terrible audio engineering. I promise it'll get better. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X at Cole Hume. I also send out a weekly newsletter of insights and financial lessons that are changing my life, which you can find in the podcast description wherever you are listening. Until next time, smile at strangers and trust your curiosity.